Pariyatti Audiobooks presents Chapter 1, Introduction, from the book Gautama the Buddha, Son of Earth, by A.H. Salunkhe, translated by Dhananjay Chavan, as narrated by Parag Sampath. Chapter 1. As naturally as a small child is attracted to its mother, billions of people have been attracted to Gautama the Buddha for the past 2.5 millennia. That I am one among them fills my mind with peace and joy. He presented a flawless ideal through his impeccable character and showed what a magnificent height a human can attain. No matter what test is applied, it cannot be denied that the Buddha was the brightest lamp from India that lit the world. This book is a token of gratitude for that great man. I am honored to be able to do it. Let us begin with some preliminary information. One tradition believes that Gautama the Buddha, Siddhartha, was born in 623 BC and attained Parinibbana in 543 BC. In other words, he passed away in 543 BC. This puts his life at 80 years. The Buddhist calendar starts from this year. Several Western scholars bring his life 60 years forward. They believe that he was born in 563 BC and attained Parinibbana in 483 BC. Renowned Buddhist scholar Rahul Sankrityayan also agrees with these scholars. At the time of Siddhartha's birth, his father was chief of the Sakyan clan. His wives, Mahamaya Devi and Mahapajapati, were daughters of Anyajana of the Koliya clan. Siddhartha was born to Mahamaya Devi. While travelling to her paternal town of Devdaha for her confinement, she gave birth under a sala tree in a grove in Lumbini. Siddhartha was born under the open sky. All his life too remained open, the same inside and outside. Maya Devi passed away a mere 7 days after his birth. But Mahapajapati nursed him with all care and affection. To start with, I wish to clarify the title and my thoughts about the Buddha in context of the title and then turn to the main subject. First, let's discuss the name Gautama. Gautama is the family name or what is called surname today. Siddhartha is the given name. Buddha indicates attainment of enlightenment, that is Bodhi. It is also possible that the name Siddhartha gained currency later in retrospect. Let us assume for the time being that it was the name given by his family. The use of Gautama is basic. In Marathi and Sanskrit, the form Gautama is used. Majority of Indians use this form. I too used it since childhood. Even then, I decided to use Gautama in this book for a specific reason. Gautama the Buddha taught in Pali. He insisted on using Pali instead of Sanskrit. This insistence was right, as we will see later in the book. We need not go into details about the relationship between Magdi of his time and Pali. It suffices to say that the form used in Pali is Gautama, not Gautama. In Tipitak too, Gautama is used everywhere. Using the Pali forms of words seems correct, as it makes sense to stick to the original forms in using proper names. Since Gautama was the family name, it is obvious that he got it automatically at birth. Thus, Gautama was his first identity. The journey of his life began as a man born to the Gautama family. This man then neither is Siddhartha nor Buddha by birth. His father and cousin Ananda were all Gautamas. Go means cow and bull. The suffix tama indicates plentiful. The natural assumption is that due to ownership of large herds of cattle, the family got the name Gautama. This tradition of owning cattle had continued in the family up to his father Suddhodana's time. We will see later how during the annual ploughing ceremony, Suddhodana would use bullocks to plough his fields. Therefore, among the people in ancient India who opposed cow slaughter, Siddhartha Gautama was the foremost. His given name was Siddhartha, the link that joins Gautama and Buddha. Before turning to the word Buddha, I would like to discuss Siddhartha, a word that is missing from the title of the book. This word is an important link that joins the two states, Gautama and Buddha. Siddhartha is one who has achieved the aim of one's life, one who has accomplished the goal of one's life. When Siddhartha's parents named the child, they must have hoped that he would truly become Siddhartha, literally one who has achieved the goal. As long as he had not attained enlightenment, that is Bodhi, he was merely Siddhartha, Siddhartha Gautama. But when he attained enlightenment, he literally became Siddhartha Buddha. The word Siddhartha became truly meaningful. Therefore, Siddhartha is the link between Gautama and Buddha. No one is born Siddhartha Buddha. Everyone starts their journey from a state similar to Siddhartha Gautama. Everyone has the capacity to become a Buddha. How much of a Buddha one becomes depends on how much effort one makes to attain enlightenment. Siddhartha Gautama journeyed to the very end possible in those times and thus became Siddhartha Buddha. When I use the words Gautama the Buddha in the title, I have in mind his journey from being Gautama to a Buddha. Gautama is the starting point and Buddha is the point of ultimate accomplishment. Buddhahood is the ultimate accomplishment of Gautama. It is also the annihilation of Gautama. When he attained enlightenment, he ceased to belong to a mere family or clan. He now belonged not only to the entire humanity, but to all living beings. What is Buddhahood? Buddhahood is the pinnacle of human progress. Let us touch upon the word Buddha in the context of the title of this book. Buddhahood is the full development of Gautama. It is the ripe fruit. Buddhahood includes proper and complete understanding of oneself, the entire humanity, and the entire living world. This understanding is unlike the understanding that we get from worldly sciences like physics and chemistry. This understanding does presuppose a process of creating a completely harmonious relationship between the inner world and the outer world, both living and non-living. In such a relationship, a Buddha today would be concerned about violence and terrorism, as well as pollution and global warming. This understanding includes the combination of ethics, wisdom, and compassion that takes a human being to the pinnacle of humanness. Without wisdom, ethics and compassion become blind. Without ethics, wisdom won't be true wisdom, turning into destructive intellect instead, and compassion would cease. Without compassion, morality and wisdom would become selfish. Therefore, these three qualities must coexist. Gautama's attainment of Buddhahood meant the ultimate maturity of these three qualities. It was humanness at its best. There are several epithets used for the Buddha. I will clarify these now. Let us start with Sambuddha and Samma Sambuddha. What is the difference between Buddha and Samma Sambuddha? Sambuddha means Samma Sambuddha, literally a proper Buddha. Bodhi is the highest noble wisdom. Even if one assumes for argument's sake that Bodhi is proper and improper, that is Samma and Asamma, the reality is that Bodhi generally denotes Samma Bodhi. It follows naturally then that it suffices to call him Buddha. Sambuddha is implicit in Buddha. Samma means proper. Samma means right. Sambuddha is enough to denote Samma Sambuddha. Thus, Sammasambuddha is a tautology. People often indulge in reiteration out of respect and devotion. In India, the practice of using 1006 times Shri is a classic example. Shri is a respectful prefix. To show more respect, people sometimes use Shri twice, Shri Shri. Sometimes it is used 1006 times. If an adjective or a superlative is used often, it gives rise to a feeling that it is somehow inadequate. Sometimes the adjective is used for other people as well. In such a case, there arises a need to add another adjective to single out the original person. There are several Pacceka Buddhas, that is silent Buddhas in the Buddhist tradition. There is also the concept of Savaka Buddha, that is disciple Buddha. It is possible that Sambuddha and Sammasambuddha was used to denote Gautama the Buddha separately from these. If we start calling several things the best, then one starts using one of the best. Best then becomes inadequate to denote the truly best. Be that as it may, Sambuddha and Sammasambuddha couldn't take place of the word Buddha, which continues to be used as the primary term everywhere at all times. A word that is often used for Gautama the Buddha is Sakyamuni. It is similar to use of Gautama the Buddha. He was born in the Sakyan clan and became a Buddha, a Muni, which was a word used in the Samana tradition for a perfect sage. It could be originally from the Samana tradition, or it could also be a combined heritage of the Samana and the Vedic traditions. Bhagava is another word that is used again and again in Pali literature to address the Buddha. Bhagava means one endowed with best qualities. The original form is Bhagavat. Bhagava is the first person singular declension. The form used in Sanskrit is Bhagavan. Pali form is Bhagava. Using the computer search, we find that this word is used in the Tipitaka 8,758 times. In the entire Tipitaka, along with the commentarial literature, Bhagava occurs 17,942 times. This count is only for the first person singular declension. The other declensions have not been counted. There are several repetitions in Tipitaka. These are called payalas. In printed edition, also in the computer editions, such repetitions are omitted and are indicated by the word payala or simply pay. If we include the occurrence of Bhagava in such repetitions, the count will be much higher. K.P. Kulkarni says that Bhagava has its root in Sanskrit word Bhrigu. He has not given any explanation about this etymology. It is just his opinion. He has not suggested any alternate etymology either. Thus, this etymological suggestion by Kulkarni seems to be artificial and without historical roots. Further discussion will throw light on why I reject any connection between Bhagava and Bhrigu. That the word Bhagava is used so often in Tipitaka and that it also denotes a color suggests a connection. Bhagava, that is the saffron color, has a cultural and religious connotation in India. How? Bhagava means Buddha and denotes one who is endowed with various qualities. It is also one of the colors of the robes of the Buddhist monks. Over time, the word that was used for Buddha started being used for the color of the robes and slowly became associated with the color. With time, the teaching of Gautama the Buddha became influential in India. If a dominant progressive thought cannot be defeated in a straightforward manner, the Vedics defeat it by appropriating it and changing its context. One of the ways of appropriating Gautama the Buddha was incorporating the word Bhagava and making it a prestigious symbol of Vedic culture. The followers of the Buddha, who had a natural liking for the saffron color, thus came closer to the Vedic tradition and slowly got entangled in it. Professor Jagannath Upadhyay says, I would like to put on record that in all Hindu religious texts, the word Bhagavan was never used for God. Bhagwan is a title for humans, and this title came into existence because of the Buddha. With the advent of Bhagwan, the gods became lower than humans as they were hedonists. Man is greater because he makes effort to attain his goals and does great sacrifices. He is capable of many a great sacrifice for high ideals. That is why he is Bhagwan. When Bhagwan was used for the Buddha, those Hindus who believed in God also did the same. In many religious texts such as Bhagavad, they too started putting the epithet of Bhagwan to all their deities. In Buddhist thought, Bhagwan means one who has taken the vow to end the misery of the world and misery of the people of the world, a vow to liberate them. God cannot be Bhagwan, but to promote their deities, to promote their God, they started using this epithet of man for gods. If we really want to understand our history, we must understand the upheavals in our cultural history. Today, Bhagwa is used in India for a particular flag. It is connected with a particular sect or persons. Thinking that it is connected to Vedic tradition, many reformists, many who believe in social equality, and non-Vedics don't feel any closeness to the color. On the other hand, some even feel aversion. They should come out of this confusion. Vedics wrote in Sanskrit and they used Bhagwan, the Sanskrit form, instead of Bhagwa, the Pali form for their deities. But it was essentially the same word. Professor Upadhyay's assertion that Bhagwan was an epithet for the Buddha seems historically sound. A different form doesn't make it a different word. The British called Mumbai Bombay, but in essence it was based and derived from Mumbai. Bhagwan is similarly just a different form of Bhagwa. The Bhagavat sect is inspired by the Buddha. Bhagavat comes from Bhagavat. One who believes in Bhagavant is Bhagavat. Given that Bhagwan was first and originally used for the Buddha, the connection seems undeniable. This is also the reason why Shankaracharya looked upon it as a non-Vedic sect and why the Bhagavat sect promoted principles such as non-violence. However, over a period of time, the sect was influenced by Vedic tradition. We do know that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was inclined towards a saffron flag. It is possible that having known the relation of the word Bhagwa with the Buddha, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was inclined towards a saffron flag as a national flag of India. At least he was not against it. In this context, Dhananjay Keer's statement is notable. He was a member of the Flag Committee of the Constitution Committee. There was a widespread discussion at the time about the national flag. Some leaders from Maharashtra and Mumbai Prantik Hindu Sabha met him to plead for saffron flag. Dr. Ambedkar assured them that if there was a dominant lobby behind it and if a strong public opinion is created, he will plead for the saffron flag. When Dr. Ambedkar left for Delhi on July 10 from Santa Cruz Airport, leaders of Mumbai Prantik Hindu Sabha and some other Maratha leaders gifted a saffron flag to him. He assured them if there was a movement for saffron flag, he will support it. It is said that Dr. Ambedkar spoke a few words in favor of saffron flag in the flag committee. But the related leaders didn't create a movement for the saffron flag, and therefore he put his weight behind the tricolor with the Ashoka wheel. Now we will direct our attention to an important word, Tathagata, one of the common and important words used for the Buddha. To put it simply, Tathagata means one who has acquired reality-based understanding. Yatha and Tatha are two words commonly used together. They denote as it is. Tatha denotes reality, truth, the objective condition. If we split Tathagata into Tatha and Gata, it means one who has reached truth, reality. If Tathagata is split into Tatha and Agata, it means one who has come to the truth. In essence, the meaning is the same in both the instances. The original form of agata is a plus gam, and one of its meaning is to know, to understand. Therefore, Tathagata also means one who has known or understood reality as it is. Buddhaghosa has given 8 different explanations for this word. However, in this book we need not go into any greater detail. It suffices to know that it was an important epithet for the Buddha and is related to truth-based. T.W. Rhys Davids says, in the Pali English Dictionary, it has not been found in any pre-Buddhist work. I have mostly used the Tathagata in this book for the Buddha. I was faced with the dilemma whether to use Bhagava or Bhagwan for Gautama the Buddha. I had difficulty with both the words. My preference was for the Pali word. However, Bhagava has acquired other meaning in Marathi, and I felt it was beyond the effort of a single person to change a deeply entrenched practice. The same thing applies to Bhagwan. I do not disagree with those Buddhist scholars who use Bhagwan for the Buddha, but I felt proper to avoid both the words. The use of Tathagata has none of these difficulties. It is significant that in the Tipitaka, the Buddha used Tathagata to refer to himself. It is possible to use the epithet for other arhats, liberated ones, but for most part it is confined to the Buddha. While translating from Pali, I have used the Tathagata instead of Bhagava or its other declensions. Some may find it incorrect, but I did so for 2 reasons. 1. I am translating the word Bhagava and have the freedom to use a synonym. 2. I had difficulties enumerated above with the words Bhagava or Bhagwan. Just as Tathagata is a commonly used epithet for the Buddha, so is Sugata. Simply put, one who has journeyed to the ultimate truth in a proper noble manner is Sugata. Thus it is a word very close in meaning to Tathagata. The Buddha is repeatedly addressed as Sammana Gautama. The Buddha himself has sometimes referred to himself as Sammana Gautama. Sammana may be looked at as related to Shrama, that is effort, thus one who makes efforts, or as Shamana, peace-giving, cooling. Both the meanings apply properly to the Sammana tradition and the saintly people of the Sammana tradition. The first meaning Shrama connotes concepts such as effort, hard work, striving and endeavor to better the life here and after. It also denies and cuts away the unreal things born of imagination. The second meaning Shamana conveys a cooling or cessation of mental impurities, keeping away of undesirable things, uprooting destructive things and overall conveying the impulse to make one's life wholesome. Sammana is applicable to the Tathagata in both these connotations. Sammana Brahmana is used repeatedly in the Tipitaka to describe the 2 traditions that are separate from each other. The twin form also shows respect for Brahmanas. Bhumiputra. A word in the title of this book means that Buddha was not from the heavens, but was a son of soil. In translating Bhumiputra as son of soil, the translator faced similar problems that the author faced when using Bhagava. The phrase is associated with socio-political movements of the local people all over the world. Without going into details of the socio-political issues involved in those movements, it can be said that this phrase expresses the aspirations of the local citizens and at times genuine concern of being disenfranchised in their own land. But sadly, it also implies an intolerance of outsiders and an intolerance of the very poor who want nothing but to earn a living by the dint of their labor. Unfortunately, Son of Soil has acquired a shade of narrow regionalism. Any such intolerance is totally foreign to the Buddha's teaching. Therefore, though Son of Soil is an elegant translation, I have not used that phrase as it would have carried a connotation that is totally antithetical to everything that the Buddha stood for. Let us discuss the phrase used in the title, originally Bhumiputra and Son of Earth in translation. the Buddha became enlightened by his own efforts by developing, mastering and reaching the pinnacle of wisdom. Thus it is true that he became different from other human beings. However, he was born a human just as any other human of flesh and blood. His journey to Buddhahood is a journey of his humanness. Therefore, he taught that every human being has a seed of enlightenment in him or her. Thus, the person who becomes a Buddha and any other human being who has not attained enlightenment are both basically human. A Buddha has reached the end of the journey, whereas an ordinary human being is on the path. There is nothing unnaturally miraculous about the Buddha. He is not a son of God, or a part of God, or a messenger of God. There is no place for God in his entire teaching. Therefore, his entire personality remains untouched by the concept of God. He was human born to Maya Devi and Suddhodana of Gautama clan. He became the Buddha by attaining enlightenment. There was neither a divine revelation at work here, nor a miracle. He was not a manifestation of divine power that came down to earth from the high skies. Siddhartha Gautama was the highest and the best manifestation of humanity. His teaching was the doctrine of work and effort that played in the lap of Mother Earth. In short, he was not born of high skies but rooted in earth. He was son of earth. Let us first discuss a few points from the Buddhist tradition before we turn our attention to the phrase son of earth. A commentary in Pali says that Maya Devi dreamed of a white elephant entering her womb. The dream is looked upon as an indication that a great son was going to be born to her. We can look at it in two ways. It is possible that Maya Devi did have such a dream. There is no reason to dismiss the dream as unhistorical. Dreams, both pleasant and unpleasant, are an integral part of our life. Therefore, at the time of conception in the joyous state of mind, Maya Devi might have seen such a sweet dream. Looking at the unblemished life of the Tathagata, his comparison to a white elephant is also meaningful. This much can be easily accepted. However, it seems that a myth was created out of imagination when it is said that he came down from the heavenly abode of the Tusita Loka. Had this myth helped in spreading the teaching of the Buddha among the masses without sullying his character, it would have been acceptable as a beautiful myth, if not as a historical fact. But Siddhartha Gautama's efforts in developing his humanness and the confidence he gave to others for doing the same are nullified in accepting this myth. It goes against the core of his character. That he was born in heaven and he came down to earth from high heaven is absolutely unacceptable at all levels. It goes against the principles of nature. It goes against history. It goes against all that the Buddha stood for. It is unacceptable that he was not born in a natural manner like any other human infant and that he was born from the side of Maya Devi's abdomen. This myth may have its origin in the excessive and distorted feeling of respect and devotion for the Buddha. It is my feeling that we disrespect Maya Devi's motherhood and Siddhartha's sonhood by denying that Siddhartha was born in a natural manner. To insinuate that there is something wrong in natural birth is to disrespect the deep bond between a mother and a child. Therefore, such myths are unacceptable. There is another mythological story and a prophecy. The commentary to the Tipitaka says that 8 Brahmins predicted Siddhartha's future. When the translator first came in contact with the Buddha's teaching, on one hand he experienced the peace and joy of walking on the middle path, and on the other hand he found several beliefs handed down in the tradition that seemed unacceptable to a rational mind. When traced in texts, these beliefs often seem to originate in the commentarial literature rather than the Tipitaka. Tipitaka remains best source we have about the teachings of the Buddha. But even the Tipitaka, as Dr. Ambedkar has argued in his book, The Buddha and His Dhamma, has been subject to revisions and cannot be taken in its entirety as the Buddha's words. It is said that these 8 astrologers predicted that either he will become a wheel-turning monarch or if he leaves home, he will become a Buddha. It is indeed possible that some Brahmins made such a prophecy. We have to look at this prophecy objectively. For an astrologer, it is a means of his livelihood. An astrologer would most likely be thrown out if he predicts that your child will be a slave, or your child will be an ordinary person, or your child will be a dullard and a failure. Of thousands of children about whom great prophecies are made, only a handful turn out to be of men and women of distinction. The rest lag way behind the predictions. The astrologers often kindle hope in the hearts of parents about their children by making great but vague predictions. This is not because they have a foreknowledge of future events or because they can see into the future. Asita Devala's case was different. We will look at it later in the book. It is said that of the 8 astrologers, 7 were elderly who said that the child will either become an emperor or a Buddha. The 8th, the young Kaundinya, was firm in his prediction that the child would become not an emperor but a Buddha. When Siddhartha went forth from home, Kaundinya went to the sons of all 7 other astrologers and suggested that they also go forth with Siddhartha. 4 agreed and left with him, forming a group of 5. Dharmanand Kosambi's comment on the myth is convincing. In his book Bhagwan Buddha, Jivan or Darshan, he says, this information about the group of 5 seems mythical. If Kaundinya was sure that Gautama was going to become a Buddha, why did he leave Gautama at Uruvela and go to Varanasi? When the future Buddha started taking food for sustenance of the body, why did Kaundinya lose his faith completely? It cannot be said that they were all Brahmins either. For sure, we cannot cut the Buddha's connection to earth. If we sever the Buddha's umbilical cord with the earth and connect it to the heaven and assume that his future was predetermined at the time of his birth, we negate the supreme efforts of this great son of earth. If we accept that he came down from the heavens to help humanity, we lose the essence of his character. How then can he say, each of you can become a Buddha like me? Only if his journey had started as a human can other humans aspire to follow his example. Mere humans have not descended from the heavens, and their future is not preordained as it is claimed for the Buddha. In the imagination of the masses, the journey of Buddhahood for someone descended from the heaven is easy, while it is far too arduous for the ordinary humans. How then can they take him as an ideal, take him as their guide, and how can they follow him? Even when such a power tells them that they too can become a Buddha, the masses are bound to feel discouraged that they are ordinary men of flesh and blood. The words of the Buddha, like me, you too can become a Buddha by your own effort, are meaningful only if the Buddha is a human being like the rest of them. His words are meaningful only when he is rooted in earth, a son of earth, and not a son of the high heavens. Walpola Rahula has commented elegantly on his humanness. In the beginning of his very first chapter of his classic book, What Buddha Taught, he writes, among the founder of religions, the Buddha, if we are permitted to call him the founder of a religion in the popular sense of the term, was the only teacher who did not claim to be anything other than a human being, pure and simple. Other teachers were either God or his incarnations in different forms or inspired by him. The Buddha was not only a human being, he claimed no inspiration from any God or external power either. He attributed all his realization, attainments and achievements to human endeavor and human intelligence. A man and only a man can become a Buddha. Every man has within himself the potentiality of becoming a Buddha, if he so wills it and endeavors. We can call the Buddha a man par excellence. There are people who object to this truthful assertion of Walpola Rahula. Lalmani Joshi, for example, states, "The humanity or the historicity of the man Siddhartha Gautama is neither denied nor doubted. What we want to stress is the fact that he, by attaining Buddhahood, had transcended human nature, become trans-historical, and was called the Transcendent One, the Tathagata. To say that the Buddha was only a human being is not only clearly wrong, but blasphemous too." Actually, overall the contents of Joshi's book should be welcome. However, his comment on Walpola Rahula's statement is harsh and extreme. Walpola Rahula didn't say that even after becoming a Buddha, he was an ordinary man. He states categorically that the Buddha was a man par excellence. It is wrong to say that Siddhartha ceased to be a human after enlightenment. When the Buddha said after enlightenment that he was not a god, or a Gandhabba, or a Yakha, or man, he merely meant that he had become different from other men in many aspects, not that he ceased to be human. When it is said that each human being has the potential to become a Buddha, it means that Buddhahood is the ultimate development of humanness. Even then, Joshi is free to have his opinion. He can also criticize Rahula's opinion. However, to accuse Rahula of blasphemy or sacrilege goes against the basic tenets of freedom of thought and tolerance of the Buddha's teaching. Siddhartha remained human even after enlightenment. We cannot say that after attaining enlightenment, Gautama ceased to be human or became something other than human. He uprooted mental defilements and attained a state higher than ordinary humans. But this didn't take away his natural humanness. It is undeniable that from his birth until his going forth into homelessness, he was a human. It is also undeniable that from the time he went forth until his enlightenment, he was a human, as it is evident from his experiments such as fasting and torturing his body. From the time he became a Buddha till the time his parinibbana, he lived and travelled in his human body. In the Tipitak, so many persons such as Prince Bodhi or Queen Mallika are seen asking him directly or through messengers about his health, whether he has any pains, whether he is enjoying his bodily comfort. This is a clear indication that his human body was subject to the same natural processes as others. He is son of earth, rooted in earth, because his body has natural limitations. There are several instances where it is said that the Tathagata is tired, he is unwell, he has become old. It should be noted that all these instances occurred after he became the Buddha. Let us look at some of the examples. First, there are instances that describe his tiredness. Once the Buddha was dwelling in Palasavana in Nalakapana. There he gave a discourse to the monks till late at night. The Sangha was still silent, waiting to hear more from him. Then he said to Sariputta, "Sariputta, the Sangha is without sloth and torpor. You should have a dialogue on Dhamma with them. I have a backache. I am going to lie down." Sariputta agreed to the Buddha's suggestion and taught Dhamma to the monks. Once, when he was visiting Kapilavattu, Mahanama Sakya had made arrangements for his stay at a monastery. Since the Buddha was tired, he didn't wait at night to talk to him. He came the next day to ask him questions and get his doubts resolved. There is also a reference to his being tired when he went to Kusinara at the end of his life. When he reached the Sala grove of the Mallas in Kusinara, he said to Ananda, "Ananda, arrange my bed between the two Sala trees with the head to the north. I am tired and would lie down." Second, we will discuss his illnesses. The Buddha was once dwelling in Negro Dharma of Kapilavattu. At that time he was recovering from a recent illness. Mahanama Sakya came to meet him and asked him a question about wisdom first or samadhi first. Knowing that the Buddha was recovering from a sickness and seeing that Mahanama was asking him a serious question, Ananda took his arm, led him aside and answered the question himself. This instance of the Buddha's illness illustrates his humanness. It also shows how much Ananda cared for him. Once when the Buddha was in Savatthi, he had dyspepsia. Upavana was attending on him at that time. The Buddha asked him to get hot water. Upavana went and stood at the door of Devahita Brahmin. On being asked, "What do you want?" Upavana answered that the Buddha had dyspepsia and needed hot water. The Brahmin then gave hot water and some jaggery to Upavana. On returning to the Buddha, Upavana bathed the Buddha in warm water and gave him hot water mixed with jaggery to drink. The Buddha felt better after that. Later the Brahmin became his devoted disciple. Once the Buddha was dwelling in Kalandaka Nivapa in Rajgaha. He was very sick at that time. One day Mahachunda came to visit him and sat on one side after paying respects. The Buddha asked him to talk about the factors of enlightenment. Accordingly, Mahachunda gave an exposition on the 7 factors of enlightenment. Hearing it, the Tathagata was satisfied and pleased and recovered from his illness. His body was like that of any other human. Once the Buddha was dwelling in Deer Park in Rajgaha. At that time he had suffered a wound from a stone splinter. He was suffering from extreme pain. He faced the pain with forbearance and without getting overwhelmed. Some deities came to visit him at the time and sang praises of his courage in facing the pain. These examples make it clear that like any other ordinary man, he used to get tired and fall sick. Just as other men get injured, he was injured at times. Just as other men suffer pain caused by injuries, he also had to endure pain caused by injuries. He was born and lived as a man of flesh and blood. His reaction to pain is different than that of most men, who not having cultivated forbearance and wisdom become totally dejected. Though he was born a human, the Buddha had travelled a long distance on the path of self-restraint through immense striving. He had conquered misery and achieved a balanced mind. There is no need to forcefully attach miracles to this issue. Such courage can be achieved by all humanity to some extent. When such courage and forbearance is not cultivated, one may not have the capacity to face adversity. But those who cultivate this wisdom are able to face adversity. It is the nature of the human body that it becomes tired and falls ill. We need not give undue importance to the praises sang by the deities. It should be looked upon as a poetic or mythical expression of the exalted state achieved by the Buddha. The last days of the Buddha are described in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta of the Long Discourses. The Buddha was sojourning with Ananda. He instructed the monks to spend the rains retreat in Vesali as per their convenience and told them that he would spend his time in Veluvagamaka. He became very sick during the rains retreat and was afflicted with excruciating pain. But he overcame the pains with his wisdom. He thought that it wouldn't be proper to attain Mahaparinibbana, that is the final passing away, without informing his followers and without taking proper leave of the Sangha. He then used his willpower to subdue his illness. Ananda went to him and saw that he had recovered. Ananda was delighted and confessed that he had lost his composure due to the sickness of the Tathagata. We should understand these instances of his body frailty in the proper context. He taught the Noble Eightfold Path to eradicate misery. It is obvious that one who walks on the path, his suffering is reduced or eradicated. However, it doesn't mean that one overcomes natural limitations of the human body. It doesn't mean that the wayfarer on the path or the teacher doesn't fall sick. Unfortunately, some people like Barrister Savarkar, who look at the Buddha with a prejudiced eye, deliberately distort this reality. Barrister Savarkar has made fun of the Buddha's illness. In his drama Sannyasta Khadag, Kshara, wife of Shakambhata, is seen poking fun at the cold afflicting the Buddha. She says, "His disciples used to lie that the teacher cures the world from the afflictions. And see what has happened. The teacher Buddha has become sick from common cold. Even the women are singing songs that make fun of him. One woman even sang a song to me. 'How is this man? Such is this man, O lady, my teacher. He came to cure the world and himself died of cold.'" The writer thought that he could reduce the greatness of the Buddha by showing that the man who took up the mission to eradicate suffering from the world couldn't cure his own common cold. However, the fact that the Buddha used to fall sick doesn't take anything away from his greatness. All it proves is that his body too was subject to natural laws. Actually, without all the layers of heavenly divinity and inexplicable miracles, the Buddha is brought closer to us ordinary human beings. His greatness was in his conduct, his thoughts, and his teachings. It remains unsullied by the common cold. The Mahaparinibbana Sutta then describes the dialogue between Mara and the Buddha, who tells Mara that he would attain Mahaparinibbana at the end of 3 months. All compounded things are subject to decay, he reminds Ananda, and tells him that he is nearing the end of his life. When he left Vesali for Kusinara, he said, "Ananda, this is the last time the Tathagata is seeing Vesali." This behavior of the Buddha is also a sign of his humanness. Though he went through illnesses, the Buddha's restraint in food, constant wandering, and purity of mind ensured that he was usually in good health. There are references in the Tipitaka about how old age had affected the Buddha's body. Once he was staying in Pubba Rama of Savatthi. In the evening, after getting up from his meditation, he sat with his bare back to the sun in the west. Ananda came to give him a massage and said, "Bhante, the Tathagata's body is not as handsome and strong as it was before. It has become lax and full of creases. It is bent now. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin all have become weak." The Buddha replied to Ananda that it was the nature of the body to get old and explained it in detail. He again told Ananda just before Mahaparinibbana how his physical condition has deteriorated. He told Ananda, "I have become old, weak and frail. I have completed the journey of life. I am 80 now. Ananda, just as a rickety vehicle is somehow kept in running condition by constant repairs, my body is continuing to function with much care." This description of his physical frailty doesn't demean him or lessen him in any way. On the contrary, it inspires people. Now we will digress a little and discuss the Buddha's connection to his birthplace in relation to the word Bhumiputra. Being a son of India, he is a son of earth for Indians. Siddhartha Gautama was born in Lumbini, which is a part of Nepal today. Therefore, the people of Nepal can rightly be proud of the fact that he was born there. Culturally, the Lumbini of that time was connected to India. The town of his parents was Kapilavattu. His town, his farms, his home, his subjects and his clan were all in India. He spent most of his life after becoming a Buddha in present-day Uttar Pradesh and Bihar states of India. This is where he attained enlightenment, gave his first discourse on rotating the wheel of Dhamma, spent his rainy retreats, and wandered for the welfare of the many. In this sense, the Tathagata is as much son of India as he is son of Nepal. People all over the world regard him as son of India. The Buddhists all over the world look at India with respect and affection as the land of the Buddha. Once I met a woman working in Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka. When she learned that I was from India, she shared her dream with me. She told me that all her life she has been putting money aside from every month's salary so that when she retires she can go to India to visit Bodh Gaya and other places associated with the Buddha. It shows how much devotion she had for the Buddha and for India, his land. The affection and respect that people have for India as the land of Buddha is certainly a matter of honor. Of course, this sense of honor shouldn't turn to undue pride and sense of superiority. It should be one of affection, closeness, and kinship. Now coming back to the word Bhumiputra itself. He was son of earth because he called upon the earth as his witness. The commentary on Jataka describes the following event. Siddhartha sat down under the peepal tree with great determination. Mara attacked him in various ways. He approached Siddhartha and said, "Hey Siddhartha, get up from this seat. This seat is not suitable for you. It is meant for me." Siddhartha responded by saying, "Mara, you have not fulfilled the 10 perfections or any other perfection. You have not undertaken the 5 great renunciations. You have done no service to your society and your people. Your conduct is not logical. On the other hand, I have done all these things. Therefore, this seat is for me and will be useless for you." Having heard Siddhartha's reply, Mara became angry. He attacked him even more ferociously. Their exchange continued. When Siddhartha asked him who was the witness to his acts of charity, Mara pointed to his army and said, "These all are my witnesses." Everyone in the army started shouting, "I am a witness, I am a witness." Then Mara asked Siddhartha, "Who is the witness of your acts of charity?" Siddhartha replied, "You have all these living witnesses. I don't have any living witness here. But this great earth is my witness." He touched the earth with his right hand, saying, "You are my witness, aren't you?" Siddhartha didn't call upon the heaven to be his witness. He called upon the earth. He didn't prove his ability based on some miracle, worldly or otherworldly. He based his claim on earth. He touched the earth saying, "I have the right to sit here and the great earth is witness to my rightful claim." The gesture showing his right hand touching the earth is famous Bhumi Sparsh Mudra. There are countless statues of the Buddha in this pose. The statue near famous Ananda Bodhi tree in Anuradhapura is also in this pose. Some may say this entire narration is a mythical exaggeration. Someone may feel that this is just a poetic license. Of course, it cannot be said that Siddhartha really had a dialogue with a person called Mara. But it is clear that he fought 2 kinds of battles. One was the battle within his own mind. A multitude of urges and impulses rise inside humans. Several defilements rise constantly that distract humans from their goals. Only a man who subjugates these defilements and urges to attain his goal can be said to be a truly courageous man. This battle within oneself can be called the battle with Mara. Siddhartha won this battle within. He repelled the attacks of desires and cravings that make one weak, and proved his merit with great determination to attain enlightenment. What he showed that there was no power in the universe that could remove him from his seat, that is, divert him from his resolution to attain his goal. The commentator has used the question, "Who is the witness for your acts of charity?" in their exchange. It would have been more appropriate if the commentator had used the entire ethical behavior for the question. We should understand that charity here is indicative of entire spectrum of morality. Siddhartha does talk about serving the society and ethical behavior. Of the 10 perfections, charity, that is dana, is the first. Therefore, one may also take dana or danadi, meaning charity. The other battle is with the people of opposing thoughts. most of the times Mara comes in form of a Brahmin. For example, in the Mara Samyutta of the connected discourses, Mara comes in form of a Brahmin with long matted hair and wearing animal skin to meet the Bhikkhus. Mara is one who kills. Whether it is the inner Mara or the outer Mara, he kills our dedication to our goal, kills our determination to follow our life's principles, kills our enthusiasm for constructive action, humiliates us, makes us mentally weak, diverts us from our goal, and at times may even kill us physically. In short, Mara is the symbol of all those tendencies and weaknesses that constantly try to stop us from getting to our goal. The Buddha attained enlightenment while sitting unshakably on earth. He didn't go to the sky or heaven to get that state. The rays of enlightenment radiated from his human body. Wisdom arose in him while sitting on earth. This light of knowledge did not enter his head from heaven or from some divine power that entered his head. If we consider his becoming a Buddha as his second birth, it occurred on this very earth, nowhere else. In this sense too, he is a son of earth, rooted in earth. He was son of earth also because he was son of a farmer. Siddhartha Gautama was born to Suddhodana. On one hand, at the time of Siddhartha's birth, Suddhodana was a king. On the other hand, his livelihood was that of a farmer. In this sense, there is an unbreakable connection between Siddhartha Gautama and the earth. In this sense too, he is Bhumiputra. There are several descriptions of Suddhodana's farming. Dharmanand Kosambi says in his Buddha Leela, the Sakyans were very proud of their clan. Their main livelihood was agriculture. They used to give much importance to this livelihood. Suddhodana was among the Sakyan royalty. It seems that he was elected chief for some time by the Sakyans. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in his book, The Buddha and His Dhamma, says, Suddhodana was a wealthy person. The lands he held were extensive and the retinue under him was very large. Being a farmer, Suddhodana used to celebrate an annual ploughing festival. In this festival, he used to plough the land himself. At one such ploughing festival, everyone was busy witnessing and enjoying the festivities. Siddhartha's attendants too became engrossed in the festivities. When left alone under a jamun, that is a rose apple tree, Siddhartha sat in meditation. This was the first time he meditated in his life, at least the first time in known history. Though the commentaries have mentioned servants, it is unlikely that he was just 3 or 4 years of age at that time. It is possible that he was at least 10 to 12 years of age. Through this meditation, he turned from agricultural farming to farming of the mind, to the farming of the cultivating the minds of people, to the farming of sowing seeds of morality and wisdom in the minds of people. We will discuss this in some detail later. The Buddha remembers his first meditation. While talking to Prince Bodhi, the Buddha narrated his first experience of removing greed and other unwholesome things from the mind and attaining the first absorption, that is the first jhana, while sitting in the cool shadow of the rose apple tree. This absorption, born out of wisdom, produced a higher happiness. The Buddha said he felt this could be the path to liberation. We find he shared with Agivesana the same memory of his first meditation. The commentary also describes Suddhodana's agriculture. While commenting on Mahasacchaka Sutta of the Middle Discourses, that is Majjhima Nikaya, the commentary gives detailed description of Suddhodana's farming. In the commentary on the Jataka, there is even a more detailed and picturesque description. I will present it in short here. Once there was a festival named Vapamangala. This was an auspicious festival of sowing the seeds. The entire capital city was decorated. All the servants, wearing new clothes and decked with perfumes and flowers, had gathered at the king's palace. 1,000 ploughs were yoked. ministers had the charge of 799 plows and the king took one plow. The remaining 200 plows were being used by other farmers. The king's main plow was decorated with precious stones and gold. The horns of bullocks, ropes, and the whip too were decorated with gold. The king came to the farm with his entire family, including his son. There was a rose apple tree on the farm that cast a dense shadow. The king arranged bed, umbrella, and marquee and handed over his son to female attendants. Then the king himself came to the field along with his ministers. The king's plough was golden, the ministers' ploughs were silver, and the farmers had the rest. They started ploughing the field from one end to the other. The sight of the king ploughing the field was a glorious one. To see this majestic sight, the attendants came out of the marquee. Then the Bodhisattva, that is the future Buddha, looked around and didn't see anyone. He sat up and attained the first absorption by observing his breath. It is possible that due to the devotion to the Buddha, the commentary is guilty of hyperbole here. Still, even in recent times, some farmers are affluent. It is possible that in ancient times, a few landlord kings had huge tracts of land. There is no need to assume or believe that the plough was indeed made of gold. By placing a small gold object on the plough was made into a symbolic gold plough. The same could be true about the silver plough of the ministers. One thing is curious and cannot be explained easily. If this was a festival of sowing, then a sowing device should have been used rather than a plough. It is possible that the word Nangala in Pali was used for such a sowing device. It is also possible that this is not a sowing festival but a ploughing festival. Very rarely, ploughing and sowing can take place at the same time, one after the other. But this would be quite a stretch to explain things. In Rhys David's Pali-English dictionary, the meaning of Vappamangala is ploughing festival. It is also possible that the commentators were not familiar with agriculture and couldn't differentiate between ploughing and sowing. In all likelihood, it was not sowing but ploughing where usually the farmers are more likely to gather together even today. In rural India, Akshaya Tritiya or Akhaji is the day when farmers start preparing their farmland for the impending monsoon. It is considered one of the most auspicious days by farmers. Whatever it may be, it is clear that Suddhodana owned extensive farmland. The Buddha's association with farming has been highlighted historically. The 11th chapter of the famous biography of Buddha, Lalita Vistara, is titled Krishi Grama Parivarta. At the beginning of this chapter, there is a description of Prince Siddhartha going to the field with ministers' sons and other boys. It is mentioned that young Siddhartha went to Krishna Grama, that is Krishi Grama. It is described how Siddhartha thought about the misery in the process of farming. Thus, on one hand, there is a description of real agriculture, and on the other hand, farming is used as a simile for life's labors. To emphasize the importance of the Buddha's attainment of the first jhana, various beautiful pictorial depictions have been immortalized at numerous places. Kalyana Temple outside Colombo in Sri Lanka has a lovely wall painting of this scene. Two white bulls are yoked to the plough. There are two birds on the left side of Suddhodana who is ploughing. On the left side of the birds, Siddhartha is shown meditating peacefully. This incident is also depicted on the famous Sanchi Stupa built by Emperor Asoka. The jambu tree within the railing at the center marks Gautama's first meditation during the ploughing festival in his childhood. In cave number 16 of Ajanta caves, there is a painting of this event. The right wall is devoted to the illustration of incidents from the life of the Buddha. Though the painting is much darkened and effaced, some of the incidents can easily be made out. Indicating that the Tathagata was born the son of a farmer is not tantamount to confirming him to a group. Though he was born to a farmer, the reality that he transcended all such narrow limitations and boundaries to belong to the entire humanity is far more important. That he was involved in agriculture in his youth is clear from his family background and his understanding of farming. But he is respected, followed, and will continue to be followed for farming of Dhamma that he engaged after attaining enlightenment. This farming of Dhamma described in Kasi Bharajvada Sutta is discussed later. If the farming of Dhamma that bears the fruit of liberation is of primary importance, then why do I say that he was son of a farmer? Do I have a constricted view behind it? I feel that if such questions arise in the minds of others, they are not out of place. All I ask is a patient and tolerant hearing of my explanation. The Tathagata's agrarian roots have immense socio-cultural ramifications. About 80% of the people of India are farmers or related closely to agriculture. Due to urbanization, the number has decreased, but still the majority of Indians are farmers. Though it is true that this huge section of India was drenched in the cool showers of the Buddha's teaching at one time, over the centuries, through many upheavals, things have changed. The tricks and manipulations by the opponents of Buddha have succeeded to the extent that this huge section has not only become distant to the Buddha, but also developed an active antipathy towards the Buddha. The opponents have succeeded in creating a negative attitudes towards the Tathagata in the minds of the farmers. Thus, 1 billion people, including the farmers of the neighboring countries such as Bangladesh and Pakistan, have gone away from the Buddha. This has harmed them by depriving them of his benevolent teaching. Social and cultural conditions of centuries has created strong prejudices. These people are not ready to examine the Buddha's teaching dispassionately. They have closed the doors of their minds so tight that they won't allow even a stray ray of Buddha's benign teaching to enter their heads. Even a drop of his compassion falling on their thirsty hearts feels sacrilegious to them. Therefore, with goodwill and benevolent intentions, we must find ways and means to get into their hearts and minds. This worldly argument that he was the son of a farmer might make them reflect that Buddha may not be so alien after all, that there is an eternal bond between him and them. The farmers of India need to understand some historical facts. There was an expectation, an insistence even by orthodoxy that farmers should just plow the fields, herd the cattle, collect the cow dung, and till the land. They should not get into philosophical or spiritual realms. The Buddha challenged this insistence. He not only challenged it but proved himself worthy. His teaching gave light to the world and brought the fragrance of happiness to humanity. He who followed his teaching gained freedom of mind. She who had earlier lost that basic human right regained it. The man who gave this freedom is not an alien. He is not an opponent, not an enemy. He has not come to enslave you. He is a kinsman. He is a son of a farmer. He is a brother, a friend. Let us know him first. Whether what he says is acceptable or not can be decided later. Let us at least open our eyes. Let us at least lend our ears to him for a while. Let us get close to him, to see him, to know him, to examine him. Let us be ready to remove our eyes from the feet of those who enslaved us and look at the heart of Tathagata who liberated us from our bondage. Let us then decide whether to walk on the path that he showed to us. These historical facts can open the hearts and minds of millions of farmers in the Indian subcontinent to the teaching of the Buddha. Therefore, it is not narrow-mindedness to state that. Rather, it is a constructive step to take the Buddha's Dhamma to the masses. We can confidently state that the Tathagata started farming of Dhamma. This son of a farmer transcended all material boundaries and cultivated Dhamma for the benefit of the entire humanity. In the Kasi Bharajvada Sutta, we find this simile. Once the Buddha was dwelling in a village of Brahmins in Magadha. It was planting time. In the farm of Kasi Bharadwaja, literally the farmer Bharadwaja, 500 plows were yoked. Kasi Bharadwaja was distributing alms. The Buddha stood on one side. Seeing him waiting for alms, Bharadwaja said, "O Samana, I plough and sow, and having ploughed and sowed, I eat. O ascetic, you should also plough and sow, and having ploughed and sowed, you should eat." The Buddha replied, "I too plough and sow, and having ploughed and sowed, I eat." Bharadwaja Brahmin asked, "But I don't see your plough or bullocks or any other farming tools. How then do you claim to be a farmer?" The Buddha then explained to him, "Faith is my seed, effort is the rain, wisdom is my yoke and plough, shame of wrongdoing is the ploughhead, mind is the rope, mindfulness is the ploughshare and the goad. I am restrained in body and speech. I have control over my food, how much I eat. Truth is the weeding and humility is the threshing. Perseverance is the bullock that is yoked and which takes me to liberation, having eradicated all suffering. This is how I plough and sow. This cultivation gives me the fruit of morality. This is how I plough and sow to eradicate all suffering." Bharadwaja replied, "Gautama, you are indeed a farmer, since your crops bear the fruit of deathless. Please accept my alms." The Buddha declined, saying, "I do not accept food in return for the teaching." Then Kasi Bharadwaja took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. The Buddha cultivated human values to transcend all differences and divisions. This is what should be followed. He truly belonged to the entire humanity. The Kasi Bharadwaja Sutta underscores his vast and all-inclusive vision. The Tathagata was insistent that the labor of our field should have a foundations of discretion, ethics and philosophy of right thoughts. The comment by Dharmanand Kosambi on the Buddha's stand on Kasi Bharadwaja Sutta is instructive. The Buddha has not criticized farming in this discourse. The moral of his discourse is that if farming is without the foundation of ethics, rather than bringing happiness to society, it will bring misery. If the crop sowed by one is taken away by another, no one will be willing to till the land, and there will be anarchy in the society. Therefore, our relation to each other should be based on non-violence. The Buddha understood that without this mental farming, the physical farming wouldn't be of any use, and therefore he inspired his Sangha to bring about an ethical awakening in the society. Though he was born to a Khattiya, a farmer, his greatness has nothing to do with it. Through countless generations, billions of people have been born in so-called high castes. Just this did not make any of them into a Buddha. The greatness of the Buddha is to go beyond family, clan, caste, varna, to connect to entire humanity. Here's an incident from his life that stirs the emotion of gratitude in our hearts. After attaining Bodhi, the Buddha went to Isipatan in Sarnath. After his rains retreat there, he went and stayed at Uruvela for 3 months. From there he went to Rajgaha. He stayed there for 2 months. Kaludai, a messenger of Suddhodana, came there. Autumn was coming to an end. Spring was about to begin. Kaludai suggested that the Buddha should visit his hometown. When the Buddha asked the reason for his request for the journey, he answered, "Lord, your father Suddhodana wants to see you, meet you. You should also meet your clansmen there." The Buddha consented and travelled with his monks from Rajgir to Kapilavattu. At Kapilavattu, he went out on alms round. He adapted the method of Sapadana alms, in which one goes from one house to the next without missing any house in between. He started from the houses on the outer side of the town. The news of the noble Siddhartha going on the alms round in Kapilavattu spread like wildfire. Wealthy people came out on the terraces and balconies of their 2-storied, 3-storied houses to watch. The news reached Suddhodana. He was greatly distressed. He rushed out of his palace and hastily gathering his robes in one hand so as to look presentable and stood in front of the Buddha. "Why are you shaming me, Lord? Why are you going on alms round? Don't I have the capacity to feed all the monks?" Tathagata replied, "O king, this is the tradition of my lineage." Suddhodana countered, "Lord, our lineage is that of the great Khattiya Mahasamatta. No one in our lineage has ever gone on alms round." The Buddha responded, "O king, this royal lineage is your lineage. Ours is the Buddha lineage." Our hearts swell up with gratitude when we see how he had uprooted and removed all the prestige of birth, family, clan, wealth and power, as well as the conceit arising from it. With his action, he showed the way to connect the entire human society through the thread of equality to bring about an inner unity. The Buddha started his alms round from the outskirts of the city, which must have been the poorer part. He showed the courage to stand in front of the houses of the poor for alms in the very city where he had travelled in majestic chariots. He shunned the houses of prestigious Sakyans. The same thing happened with the monks such as the Kassapa brothers who were earlier high caste Brahmins. They too now stood at the door of the lower caste people for alms. The Buddha gave the message of futility of pride in caste to the Sakyans, who had extreme conceit about their clan. He made it clear that he didn't belong to the lineage that took pride in its royal lineage, but to the Buddha's lineage that treated all humans as equal. The alms round of the Tathagat and his bhikkhus was not begging, but it was natural for the Sakyan king to feel his son was shaming him by begging for food. It was comforting to know that once he talked to the Buddha, Suddhodana's thinking changed. The Nidana Katha says that Suddhodana became an Arhat. It means that he too became free of all defilements, including those of pride in one's caste. Inner humanity, not outer appearances, is the true sign of a human. This incident of the Tathagata and his father is bound to overwhelm us when we see it in our mind's eye. The Buddha says, being humane is more delightful than even the symbols of Dhamma. In the connected discourses, we find a touching and eloquent verse that tells us that the Tathagata gave more importance to being humane than to the symbols of Dhamma. Once Sakka, the king of gods, came to visit him in Savatthi. After saluting him, Sakka sat on one side and asked him, "Venerable sir, what is a delightful place?" The Buddha answered, "Chattiyas in parks and woodland shrines, well-constructed lotus ponds, these are not worth a 16th part of a delightful human being. Whether in a village or a forest, in a valley or on the plain, wherever the Arhants dwell, it is truly a delightful place." Chattiyas were an important symbol of the Sammana tradition and especially of the Buddhist tradition. For about 5 centuries after the Buddha, there were no statues of the Buddha. During these centuries, Chattiyas were the venerated symbol of the Buddha. But the Tathagata said that a perfected human life is far more important than such symbols. The word he used can be translated as the delight of being human. What a sweet and lovely description. Why the greatest? After describing how the Buddha was rooted in earth, let us see why the title has Sarvottam Bhumiputra, the greatest son of earth. When I call the Buddha Bhumiputra, I look at him differently than those who consider their revered ideals to be sons of gods. Thus it is clear that I don't want to compare him with those persons. Not that it cannot be done. It is just that I don't want to do it. For me, Son of Earth is a human being. Among the humans, I find him the greatest. This assertion has two limitations. First, I do not state or claim that his contribution to every field of human endeavor was greater than all others. For example, I do not claim that his knowledge of physics was greater than that of scientists like Newton. What I mean is that he was the greatest in imparting the best wisdom to live a happy life as an upright human being. There should be no hesitation to say that he was the greatest son of India. Second, this is my personal opinion. I state it with humility. I accept the freedom of others to accept or reject my opinion, or to have a different opinion. The Buddha himself believed that if one takes such a stand about the truth, it protects the truth. While we will discuss it in much detail later, I cannot resist the temptation to venture an opinion at this stage. In the times after the Buddha, the idea of sthita prajna, that is one established in wisdom, was much honored and praised. But in the known history of India, the Buddha most certainly is the best sthita prajna. Swami Vivekananda had often expressed his differences of the opinion about the Buddha's teaching. Still, there was an immense respect for the Buddha in Swami Vivekananda's mind as seen from his statement in his speech that he gave on February 2nd, 1900 in California. He states, "See the sanity of the man. No gods, no angels, no demons. Nobody. Nothing of the kind. Stern, sane, every brain cell perfect and complete, even at the moment of death. No delusion in my opinion. Oh, if I had one drop of that strength, the sanest philosopher the world ever saw, the best and the sanest teacher, and never that man bent before even the power of tyrannical Brahmins. Never that man bent. Direct and everywhere the same." Renowned Indologist Sharad Patil says, "There are no two opinions about the Buddha being the greatest man among Indian and Western scholars. Keeping aside controversies surrounding him, it must be admitted that Acharya Rajneesh, Osho, was a serious scholar of Indian philosophy. He often praised the Buddha. He said he was the greatest Indian ever. At other time, Osho said, 'Since Buddha, India has not produced a single man comparable to him.' The Tathagata can be called greatest because he gave dignity and self-respect to the countless men and women who were victims of a cruel and unjust social system that denied them the basic human dignity." Professor Jagannath Upadhyay says, "In reality, the Buddha's Sangha was a refuge to the culture that opposed the traditional orthodoxy. In creating a Sangha, he encouraged a democratic process. He presented an ideal of cultural welfare that included the so-called lower castes or classes in front of the entire world. We thus see that the Buddha gave an exhortation to the whole world for awakening the enormous power of humans by establishing the central importance of man in the field of religion, society, and culture. All bow with devotion in front of this supremacy of man. A great poet of the 3rd century says, Aho sansaramanadasya buddhopadasya diptata manusyam yatra devanam sprahani yatvamagatam. Translation: The Buddha's arising on the earth was such a light of human progress that even the gods became envious of the humans. We will see later in this book how the Tathagata gave Upali and Sunita the opportunity to rise to the highest state and how they became a subject of envy of the gods because of it. The words quoted by Professor Upadhyay is by a Buddhist poet named Maitri Seta. Now let's direct our attention to the changes that occurred in the Buddha's teachings after his death. The Buddha lived more than 2,500 years ago. In this long period, the teaching was transmitted from one generation to the next, from one country to another. During this transmission, it is inevitable that some changes occurred inadvertently or were made deliberately in his teachings. Therefore, to understand his teaching, we must rely on his original words. Though I have quoted many scholars in this book, my presentation is based mainly on the Pali Tipitaka. This is the most ancient literature of the Buddha's teaching. Therefore, the Pali Tipitaka remains the most reliable source to understand the Buddha directly and properly. Even then, we must be aware of the distance that has crept in between the original teaching of the Buddha and its arrangement of words in the Tipitaka. We will argue why this is necessary. Ani's Sutta, a discourse by the Buddha in the Connected Discourses, is thought-provoking. The gist of what he said while dwelling in Savatthi is, in the past, the Dasaraha people had a kettle drum. When it became cracked, the Dasaraha people inserted another peg. Eventually, time came when the original drumhead had disappeared and only a collection of pegs remained. Similar thing will happen with the bhikkhus of the future. When the Tathagata's teaching, which is supra-mundane and deep in meaning, is being recited, they will not be eager to hear it, will not pay attention to it. On the other hand, they will listen to those discourses which are mere poetry, beautiful in words and phrases, created by outsiders. Thus, the teaching of the Tathagata will disappear. To avoid it, you should train yourself to pay attention, to listen, and to apply your minds to understand the teaching. The discourse is applicable to us today as well. In more than 2,500 years, several extraneous, spurious things have entered the Buddha's teaching. It is our duty to use our discretion to remove such spurious additions when we imbibe his original teaching. Sometimes, a man gains a new perspective on things and tries to convey it to people for their benefit. He uses language to communicate. Words and meanings are two components of language. These are two faithful messengers that convey the thoughts of a man to another. But if they are turned into traitors, the true message is not conveyed. When words are distorted, changed, omitted, or added, the meaning of the original message is lost or becomes distorted. The profound thoughts of the great man thus become distorted or get lost. Therefore, the Tathagata warned again and again that one must be careful about a word and its meaning. To preserve the original teaching of the Buddha was no easy task. It can't be denied that there was some change in the teachings over the time. Mahavamsa text from Sri Lanka gives an important evidence of this. Due to the patronage of Emperor Asoka, the Sangha started getting many gifts. People too were happy with the Sangha and supported it with gifts. As the members of the other sects lost both royal patronage and people's support, they started wearing saffron robes and started living with the bhikkhus. They started to spread their own philosophy as that of the Buddha and started conducting themselves in any way they pleased. The elder Moggaliputta saw the danger in this and found that he couldn't help it in the near future. He spent 7 years in solitary meditation on a mountain. The heretics who had entered the Sangha were vile in speech and far outnumbered the bhikkhus who couldn't counter them. Even Uposatha, the fortnight assembly of the bhikkhus, and Pavarana, which is held at the end of rain's retreat, couldn't be held. When Asoka heard this, he sent one of his ministers to mediate in the Sangha and to encourage them to start Uposatha again. The minister conveyed the royal order to the bhikkhus who refused to do so, saying they wouldn't have Uposatha with an outsider. Then the minister started beheading the bhikkhus who wouldn't listen. Seeing this barbaric act, Asoka's brother Tissa, who was also a bhikkhu, went and sat next to the bhikkhus. Seeing Tissa, the minister stopped. The king was distraught as he felt that he was indirectly responsible for this heinous act. He sent emissaries to invite the elder Moggaliputta Tissa. The elder came and gave proper advice to the king. The king called all the bhikkhus, true as well as heretic, in the entire region to the capital in that very week. He and the elder sat behind a curtain while they were interviewed. The bhikkhus were interviewed on their beliefs. Alien entrants in the Sangha were found to hold beliefs such as eternalism, whereas the real bhikkhus said that they believed in Vibhajavada, the doctrine of analysis. The elder Moggaliputta Tissa confirmed the veracity of their beliefs. Then the king drove out about 60,000 fake bhikkhus from the Sangha. The real bhikkhus resumed uposatha. The Buddha's teachings were also distorted significantly. Even during his own lifetime, the teaching of the Tathagata was sometimes distorted, and he repeatedly cautioned the bhikkhus about it. The Dutiya Pamada, the Vagga of the numerical discourses, states, even though the Tathagata has not said or stated something, some people said that the Tathagata said it or stated it. Even though the Tathagata has said or stated something, some people said that the Tathagata has not said it or stated it. Even though the Tathagata has not acted in a particular manner, some people said that the Tathagata acted in that particular manner. They said that the Tathagata has laid down his rule, whereas in reality he has not laid it down. And that the Tathagata has not laid down this rule, whereas in reality he has laid down the rule. Such bhikkhus causes harm to many, misery to many, loss to many. They destroy the noble Dhamma. The Tathagata had told the bhikkhus to make a careful effort to know his teaching if they felt that it was distorted. Once he was dwelling in Ananda Chaitya in Bhognagar. He called the monks one day and said, "O bhikkhus, a bhikkhu might say, this is Dhamma, this is Vinaya, this is the dispensation of the Lord. I have heard this from the Tathagata himself. Bhikkhus, when you hear him, don't agree or disagree immediately. Rather, understand how the words have been arranged. Compare it with the suttas and the Vinaya. If it is not keeping in with the suttas and the discipline, understand it is not said by the Buddha. That it is a tainted understanding of the bhikkhu, and you should reject it. If a bhikkhu's statement is in keeping with the suttas and the Vinaya, then it should be accepted as the Tathagata's teaching, and that the bhikkhu has understood it correctly. Similarly, whatever is heard from the Sangha, from one or more elders who memorize the discourses, from a bhikkhu, it should be compared with the known suttas and the discipline of the Buddha. The Buddha was aware that the teaching can be distorted. It had happened in his own lifetime, and he had to rectify it often. He earnestly wished that the principles that he espoused and spread for the benefit of society should reach the society without any alteration. If they got distorted, then instead of benefiting people, they would harm people. The care he took to keep the original teaching from getting distorted tells us about his discerning, restrained, and civilized persona. Not only did he warn against blind acceptance in his name, but also cautioned against outright rejection without proper examination. He encouraged a balanced examination about the truthfulness of the content. He once told the bhikkhus, 2 types of people falsely blame the Tathagata. Which 2? 1. A person who explains that which is going to be inferred as that which has been inferred. 2. who explains that which has been understood as that which is going to be understood. That which is going to be inferred or understood is Neya, about the future. That which has been inferred or understood, Nita, is about the past. Epistemologically, Nita is more important than Neya. Nita is what is known, what has already been discovered. There is certainty about it. Neya is uncertain and even confusing. It needs speculation. Whatever has been proclaimed by the Tathagata as uncertain or speculative must be conveyed as uncertain and speculative. And whatever has been proclaimed as certainly known should be conveyed as certainly known. The Tathagata understood that just discovering the truth and proclaiming it wasn't enough, and it was vital to be vigilant in ensuring that it was conveyed exactly as proclaimed without distortions. In his book on the Buddha, Dharmanand Kosambi writes, "It is impossible to state how many of the utterances were actually extant at the time of Asoka. There is no doubt that there were additions to them. In this way, many incongruous things entered in the biography of the Buddha. Many parts of Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses, are later additions." Renowned Buddhist scholar Rahul Sankrityayan also feels that changes have occurred over time in the original discourse of the Buddha. In the preface of his Hindi translation of Vinay Pitak, he writes, "Even the teachers of the past have accepted that some of the verses in the Tipitak are later additions. Except the Matikas, matrices, the entire Abhidhamma is a later creation." Then the question arises of whether the entire Sutta Pitak or discourses and Vinay Pitak, the discipline, are authentic words of the Buddha. Many such Gautam Mukha Sutta of middle-length discourses are clearly from the time after the Buddha. All the verses of the Sutta Pitak seem to be later addition except those that can be considered spontaneous utterances of the Buddha. It is also safe to assume that all the descriptions of the miraculous abilities of the Buddha and his disciples, of heaven and hell, of gods and demons have all been added later on. In the preface of his classic text Buddhacharya, Pandit Rahula says, "Some chapters, like some elders in the Sangha, stopped considering the Buddha as human and portrayed him as superhuman. They believed in great miraculous powers of the Buddha. For some, the Buddha's birth and passing away was merely a show. Thus, various beliefs started creating differences in the discourses and discipline. To defend the unnatural acts of the Buddha, new suttas were written and added. Once we understand and keep in mind the view put forth by Pandit Rahula about heaven, hell, God's miracle, and such miraculous things, we will not be shocked when various translations given in his book mention such concepts. If we accept Pandit Rahula's view, we need not give explanations at every juncture when these concepts are mentioned." One of the foremost and pioneering Buddhist scholars in the modern era, Mrs. Rhys Davids, states, "Yours is to follow our archaeologists and to dig for the original Troy beneath more than one superimposed city. For that which was Sakya is not that which you find displayed in category and formula, in sermon, and reiterated refrain in the Pitaks. I would go so far as to say in utmost seriousness that could you put into hands of, say, Sariputta any portion of Vinaya or Sutta, he would tell you it was hard for him to recognize in it anything that he taught as the right-hand man of Gautama. Yet, you have no reason therefore to despair of getting at something of original purport beneath these many palimpsests. Nay, your position as a serious student becomes so much more interesting. Yours it is not to follow in newly made bypass road, but to aid in the road making. You are coming to this study just when labors of a generation and more of pioneers have cut a clearing for the road of the true through the jungle of ignorance about the Sakya and its birth. The road has now to be made. Perhaps she is exaggerating, but there is certainly some truth in what Mrs. Rhys Davids says. Before we begin, it is vital to understand the original view of the Buddha. Our interest should lie in the true nature of the Dhamma that the Buddha propounded. For this, we must appreciate the transmission of his teaching over time all over the world, the changes wrought in it, its expansion, the changes in its appearance and essence. It is essential to be aware of the difference between the original and the additional or the distorted. We cannot equally revere and accept both of these. Their merit is not the same. We cannot fathom it if we take a biased view. There is a possibility that the real nature of the Buddha's teaching may not be apparent to us if we look at it through the eyes of a votary of a particular sect or tradition among the numerous sects and philosophies that go in his name. This is not to belittle his followers. We cannot put followers and opponents on equal footing. When his opponents tried to destroy his teaching, his followers tried to preserve it to the best of their ability. The Buddha's Dhamma was not a rigid set of principles. It was not a closed tradition bound by rituals. It was a journey beyond all boundaries. It was a journey that truly set a wayfarer free. When we embark on this journey, we must make an effort to discern as much as possible the unadulterated teaching. The Dhamma kept expanding with time. It reached people of various traditions, different regions with different geographical and cultural characteristics. This led to a two-way exchange. Various people welcomed Dhamma, accepted Dhamma, and their lives changed for the better due to inculcation of Dhamma in their life. There were also local influences on Dhamma due to different social customs and cultural thinking based on the local background. In India, the Tathagata had both dialogue and conflict with Vedic tradition. During this time and later on, many from Vedic tradition accepted Dhamma. In later years, some returned to the Vedic tradition. Due to this, many tenets of Dhamma were absorbed into Vedic tradition. On the other hand, those Vedics who had accepted Dhamma couldn't totally let go of their old baggage. Naturally, their influx changed the appearance of Dhamma. For example, deities such as Brahma, Sakka, though in a subordinate form as devoted disciples of the Buddha, were accepted by the Buddhist tradition. This also happened outside India. Sri Lanka and Tibet are two examples. One more thing should be noted. Sometimes this reciprocal exchange occurred when very influential persons came in contact with the Dhamma. Nagarjuna, Padmasambhava, and Dr. Ambedkar are some of the examples. The life of these great personalities took a different turn due to contact with the Dhamma. Huge changes occurred in the lives of their followers. The presentation of Dhamma also changed due to their influence. We should know these processes when we try to understand Dhamma. Over 25 centuries, huge changes have possibly occurred in both the words and their meanings. Sometimes a word gets lost. Sometimes a word becomes ugly. Sometimes it acquires grandeur. Sometimes it loses its essence. It is a protagonist in one drama and becomes an antagonist in another. Therefore, we should not be surprised about a particular word that we may hear coming from the Buddha, but try to understand its true meaning. Sometimes the Tathagata taught in verse, sometimes through parables, sometimes allegorically. We need not always think of an action expressed in a speech as a miracle or representative of actual historical fact. Sometimes the line between truth and poetry is grey, and we should learn to recognize it. We should always have gratitude for those who preserved the seeds during famine. Various people, groups, institutes, sects, and countries have done something for the Dhamma over the centuries. There may be dispute between some of these groups. It is logical that if we are associated with one group, we will develop rigid attachment for that group. The Buddha himself never allowed the Dhamma to be tainted by the slightest intolerance. Thus, those who follow Dhamma cannot be intolerant. While evaluating other groups, understand their limitations. To reject outright all their contributions is wrong. For example, we may not like or understand or accept a thing or two in the Dhamma in Tibet or Sri Lanka. But we should not, for that reason alone, turn our back on the tradition. They have preserved the seeds of Dhamma when there was famine in India. To point out their flaws or blame them without any constructive reason is not proper. This is also applicable to smaller local groups. It is not my view that today we should accept whatever the Buddha taught as it is. It is undeniable that humanity has evolved with time. There is no place for fundamentalism in the Tathagata's teaching. New questions crop up with time and new answers are needed. We will see later how the Tathagata showed flexibility and sometimes changed rules that he had himself laid down earlier. I don't think this view takes anything away from the faith in the Tathagata. The human mind is the same as it was at the time of the Buddha. Naturally, the essence of what he taught is still beneficial for humanity. Moreover, its need is even greater for humanity that sometimes seems to be perched on the cliff of self-destruction. Let us then try to reach that essence. For me, the reader is the final arbitrator. It is said that everyone's universe is as big as his or her head. This is true because whatever knowledge we acquire of inner and outer subjects and its objectivity depends on several things: the capacity of our perception, perceiving intellect and sense organs, factors that aid or obstruct perception, our view that may be enriched by past experiences or prejudiced by them, our outlook, sources of our information and interest of these sources. Keeping aside the discussion of the entire universe to one side, two among the several aspects of human understanding are very important. First, man has the capacity to acquire knowledge of a particular field and to make efforts in that direction. Second, the knowledge of a particular subject thus acquired is limited, even tainted, by his or her own personal factors. In conclusion, how a person uses her capabilities and how she overcomes her limitations decide the quality of her comprehension. Keeping this in mind, the reader certainly has the freedom to evaluate my present writing.